The annual SATSA conference kicks off on the 23rd of July, running through until the 25th. First of all, why Port Elizabeth as the host city?
Well, thanks, Kerry. The theme this year is transforming geographical spread. We've had great growth in the last 2 years into South Africa, but a lot of that growth is fixated on the key tourism nodes of Kruger and Cape Town in the Western Cape. And there is a big challenge about how we facilitate and stimulate geographical spread in terms of our tourist arrivals to the country. Port Elizabeth is in the Eastern Cape. It's an area that we think is ripe for new product development, ripe to really engage the market about considering real practical geographical spread. We haven't been in PE for quite a while, well before I took over as the SATSA CEO. And since then we've had 4 conferences. We've had 2 down in the Western Cape, 1 in George at Fancourt and 1 up in White River. So PE was an option. There's been great support, I must say, from both the city and the province in luring us into the Eastern Cape, and we hope people will see it as a springboard to not only come to the conference, there's a rich program, but also to come and do pre and post tours that have been facilitated by the city and the province.
This theme that you've mentioned, transforming graphical spread, tell us a bit more about that. Where does it come from? What's it all about? And kind of how is that leading into the topics that will be discussed?
Well, as I mentioned in the answer to the previous question, this is one of the key imperatives that we have in the country. It's not okay just to grow tourist numbers and to have those numbers only going to certain parts of the country. And I think those, particularly the Western Cape and the areas around Kruger, we've seen over the last 2 years there've been some capacity constraints. We've been creaking at the seams, and I think as an industry, it's incumbent on us to see how we can actually practically start sort of spreading those tourist receipts into more marginalised parts of the country. So, we've gone to a part of the country that doesn't receive as much as some of the more well-trodden areas. But we put a program together that really actually speaks to both showcasing the Eastern Cape, to looking at what we need to do from both an infrastructure and a product development point of view. So these are proper facilitated discussions with some industry leaders, with experts both from the public and the private sector, and we're hoping that the discussion that comes out of the conference, together with, we're hoping, quite a vibrant audience participation, because that's been the norm over the past 4 years, will really help everybody to see what we can do in terms of a practical point of view about actually driving growth into marginalised areas.
Now, SATSA is partnering with SA Tourism again. What do you see this partnership bringing to the conference and to tourism as a whole after the conference?
Tourism, for me, always works best, and you look at some of the great long-haul success stories like Australia, where the public and the private sector are all on the same page and singing off the same hymn sheet. So we're particularly excited about deepening our partnership with SA Tourism, as they're the principal tourism promotion agency in the country. And although SATSA puts the conference on, this year it really is it's the SATSA conference in partnership with South African Tourism. There's been deep interaction around the substance of the program. There's certain key issues that they are coming to the party on and are bringing to the conference. There's also great participation from the minister, who will obviously lead things off. But it really speaks to a practical partnership dealing with practical topics and what we can do together to actually drive growth.
And your other partners, who else can we look forward to hearing from?
Well, the other partner, and I mentioned it in the previous answer, is the province and the city. So we've got Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency have been a partner, Tour and Nelson Mandela Bay Tourism. So those three agencies have come together and worked very closely with our SATSA chapter in the Eastern Cape. They've been incredibly supportive, not only in terms of helping put the conference on, but also in arranging a very rich program of pre and post tours that we hope delegates will avail themselves of and go and see the richness of the Eastern Cape, particularly the eastern half of the province. That's the more marginalised area, but you know, when you think about it, the Wild Coast is one of our most beautiful, unspoiled areas, and it just gets very, very little in terms of international tourism.
Take us
Sorry, then if I could just say, sorry,
Yes,
my
yes,
thing. And
please.
our other partner from a private sector point of view is our key sponsor, Bidvest Bank. So they are also sponsoring and will be with us. They've got some new product developments that they're going to be talking to members about, and we're confident that that's going to translate into bottom line savings for SATSA members.
Excellent, what we all look forward to. And the format of the event, take us through how that's all going to work.
Well, look, for people who haven't been to one of these before, we in the past have had in the region of about 280 attendees. We're at the Boardwalk Hotel. It's a fantastic Sun International product. It's a relatively new hotel. We've got great accommodation around it from the City Lodge property, so we can offer people everything from a 5-star room down to a 1-star room within walking distance of the conference. The actual conference venue, we can accommodate 350 attendees this year, and we're hoping to push the numbers to that. What we don't do at our conference is we don't have speeches. We don't have PowerPoint presentations. So nobody's sitting at tables on their iPads or on their iPhones sort of dawdling while the conference proceeds. The entire conference is structured around a series of facilitated discussions. We've got some comfortable chairs on the stage. They're between 4 and 6 or 7 people. There's a facilitator, and it's a facilitated discussion that then very quickly ripples into the audience, and the audience participates. And to that end, we build what we call a theatre in the round. So it's like a little mini stadium. And essentially what you get is a comfortable chair. You're in at 9 o'clock. We don't start earlier because we may have indulged on the night before, and you in at 9 and out at 5. There's a comfortable chair. There's interesting program to captivate you, and we found in the past that it's been a very participatory conference. The audience gets involved. We have had great feedback from the facilitated panel discussions, and it just lends itself to an environment where people come away with learning, and that's the main thing. And what we don't really do is fly in experts from around the world. We've got a great array of expertise within our sector, and we are drawing in that. It's also not a Ponzi conference. Everybody's in jeans and jerseys. It's a relaxed conference. We also like to, and particularly the opening evening, we don't do gala dinners where people are sort of sitting at one table stuck with only speaking to a couple of people. It's a relaxed, deconstructed evening. The opening evening is really being hosted by South African Tourism, and it's really showcasing the best that the Eastern Cape has to offer from both the cultural point of view, but particularly the city of PE around cuisine and wine. And I think we're going to blow people away. I mean, a lot of people see PE as quite a sleepy sort of city down on the Eastern Cape coast. There's some phenomenal stuff happening in PE, and we're hoping that just the food and wine evening is going to blow people away. It's a relaxed evening where you can catch up with people you may not have seen for a couple of months from other parts of the country. You can go to bed early or you can go to bed late. It's really up to you. And then the conference kicks off proper on the Tuesday. We've got the minister leading proceedings, and I can go into the format of that. And then the conference itself flows from that. And then on the Wednesday morning we have the SATSA AGM. That's for SATSA members only. That's from 9 to 10, and then the conference will carry on after 10 o'clock.
And talking about this whole interactive, informal environment, and you mentioned Minister Hanekom, he'll be leading a conversation on Tuesday, the 24th. And you've actually put a call out to SATSA members to send questions beforehand. Tell us about that. When is the deadline? What is the expectation? How will that proceed?
In the past, we've always been grateful that the Minister really values the opportunity. I think it's one of the few real proper conferences, particularly on the inbound side, that takes place. And he's supported it, he's attended it. But what we want to move away from this year is simply the Minister giving us a speech and then that just flowing into ad hoc questions from the audience. What we've seen in the past is some of those questions from the audience can be good ones, some can be a bit pointed, and some can just be quite poor. And then we end up spending valuable time trying to deal with a question that may or may not really be relevant or of sort of great interest. So what we're doing it just in order to keep things fresh and a little bit different this year is I'll just be having a conversation with the Minister. We'll be chatting a little bit about his past. I think he has an incredibly rich set of experiences that many of which took place before he became Minister of Tourism. It'd be nice to sort of just hear his story, so to speak, but then to actually let that flow into some of the current issues, which we will be focusing on. But then what we've done is we've asked SATSA members to actually send us your questions, and what we want to do is to choose the 6 best questions that really deal with contemporary issues that are relevant and important to SATSA members, and to get the Minister to actually answer those questions. There will still be time for some audience participation, but we wanted to really use the time as productively as possible, and we're hoping people will find this of value this year.
Brilliant. And that kind of environment stimulates brainstorming and idea development, and it's really something that everyone can get involved in. And as you said, there's so much knowledge that we hold in our sector, just locally within South Africa. And to springboard off that is just, it's fertile ground for growth in tourism.
Absolutely. And look, we've been very fortunate. For anybody who hasn't come to this, the one thing that we do get, and it's not that it's from me, from a personal SATSA point of view, but just from SATSA as an organisation, we are incredibly honoured that we do get our industry leaders coming to this conference. So there's a massive opportunity not to only see some of the industry leaders on the panel discussing key areas, but they're also in the audience. They're also having a beer. They're also at the evening functions. There's huge networking opportunities simply to actually go and actually interact with some of the key people who have not only formed our industry but continue to sort of drive the thinking within the industry and also the competitiveness of the industry. And let me say, not only from the private sector, there's some key public sector expertise, both the Minister, his team, his advisors, the DG, some of the senior people in the department, and then Sisa and Shona and his entire executive team from SA Tourism. There's going to be a big contingent from them. We're incredibly grateful that they're all coming along. Many of them are participating in panel discussions, but there are also people who are just going to be there and, next to the wine stand where you can share a glass of wine and have a chinwag with them.
Well, that's where some of the best ideas come up, isn't it? Tourism Update is very excited about the lineup of topics. Take us through some topics that our attendees can look forward to get the blood pumping. Okay,
well, we always try and focus on issues primarily of direct relevance to SATSA members, and the sort of headline act that follows the conversation with the Minister and then an input from the SA Tourism CEO is a session on pricing. Given the massive growth we've had, we've seen quite a strong growth in how our pricing's moved. So we have a session on pricing. How do we move away from a boom and bust model? It's facilitated by Monica Yule, the CEO of Private Safaris, one of the more considered industry members, if I might say so. We've got in the blue corner Craig van Rooyen from Tour d'Afrique and Martin Vist, dare I say Vist the Beast from Tourvest. They're in the blue corner, and in the red corner we've got some product owners. We've product people representing product. Lindy Rousseau from Singita, Neil Bald from AHA, and Ryan Powell from And Beyond. And I think And Beyond's going to bring quite an interesting perspective. They both play in the product space and in the tour operating side of things. But I think it's going to be a very interesting session in which we can have key industry proponents really wrestling with this whole idea and exploring it. Following that, we've got a session, and I think it's very important that we've kept this on the conference agenda around transformation. But what we're really trying to do within this session is to try and sort of unearth, if you will, what can SATSA members practically do. There has been a lot of debate around this. There's been a lot of discussion, but given the profile of the SATSA membership, where many companies are small owner-managed entities, what can they practically do to actually help the very necessary conversation and the very necessary practical actions that need to go into transformation? So there has been a lot of good work done. We're going to be hearing from the Triple B Council about what they've been doing. Then we're also going to be hearing from some SATSA members. There's some very practical, real best practice that some people are doing. So that's going to come into the conversation. Cisa and Shauna is going to be moderating that panel. We then have a very interesting session, and this comes on to back to the whole area of geographical spread, which is around infrastructure and product development, which are twin essentials to underpinning geographical spread. So there's a rich panel there that's going to be having a look at that. One of the key issues that's impacting on our industry at the moment is the whole issue of the POPI Act and various EU pieces of legislation, including the GDPR. And there's a panel discussion around that, probably more informative than discursive, but certainly there'll be some discussion around that. We've then got another interesting sort of predominantly, well, I suppose it's private and public sector, but it's really talking about where we go in terms of the future of particularly road shows and to a lesser extent trade shows. Karen Terrell from Sun International is moderating that session. We've got some of the key road show facilitators, Derek Houston and Jackie Reynolds, are on the panel, together with Hanley Slubber, who puts an amazing and has really set the benchmark in terms of the Indian roadshow. Abby Schwartz from SA Tourism, who manages the whole Nordic area. So there's a particularly rich discussion to be had around that. Then we've got what we've never really done before is focused on, we've tended to be very South Africa specific, and we've got an area on selling the region and really broadening our horizons to take in our neighbouring countries in South and East Africa. And Tembi Kunani Masimang, who's the acting CEO of Retosa, is going to be facilitating that. And we've got representatives from some of our neighbouring countries, both from the private and public sector, and I think that's going to be quite a rich discussion. We also have a very informative session in which SA Tourism are going to be talking to us in a conversation facilitated by Belinda McIntyre of Soho Sun around their global trade strategy. What does it mean? What are they doing? Where are they spending money? And I think that's going to also be of seminal interest to our members. And then the final session is really paying homage to our hosts, and that's looking at the Eastern Cape and unlocking geographical spread. Very proud to say that we've got the godfather of Eastern Cape tourism and a doyen of the industry, Adrian Gardner of the Mantis Collection, facilitating that session. And in that we've got two key inbound gurus, if I might say so, Craig Smith from New Frontiers and Felicity Vieira, who's the Chief Marketing and Procurement Officer from Tourvest. So they're on the panel together with representatives of the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism, Tour and Nelson Mandela Bay Tourism. But the reason that Craig and Felicity are there is it's really important to try and understand what has to be true in order for something to be sold. So it's all very well that we come up with interesting ideas and product, but are they sellable? What needs to happen? So we're hoping that that's really going to guide and sharpen people's focus in terms of leaving a bit of a legacy around the Eastern Cape and how we can actually really practically start sort of driving some more business into the province.
And that is an incredible lineup of topics that really drill down into the core of what we're dealing with in local tourism. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you,
Fantastic. And what are attendees going to take out of this conference?
Look, we're hoping that, given the array of topics that we have here, that we're going to sort of hopefully shift mindsets. I mean, I think we saw it last year. Look, we've hopefully seen it over the last 4 years in terms of the sort of new format, and we learn and try and sort of improve every year. But I think thinking back to the conference last year, where the theme was transformation, the sort of main essence of that. The session we had on transformation last year really, for me, was a mind shift session. We went beyond the norm in terms of the discussion, and I think that you'll find with some of these topics that we have here, we really are looking at actually getting people slightly out of the comfort zone, really opening our perceptual horizons, and seeing what we can actually take out from a practical point of view. So, for example, the transformation set, what can I practically do as a SATSA member? There may be some real practical learning that comes out of it. And equally with some of the other sessions, I think that people will be a lot richer in terms of the learning that they actually get from the conference, from the discussions. And then, once again, I think there's some huge networking opportunities. We've got 2 great relaxed sort of evenings. There's a golf day on the Monday at Humewood, one of the top golf courses, but there's some great pre and post activities for non-golfers. So I think people, and what we always say, it's fun in a relaxed setting, and I think that you will come away a lot richer in terms of some of your understanding about some of the key issues that we have on the go at the moment, and hopefully people can take those back into, from a private sector point of view, into their businesses and sharpen their competitive edge, and from a public sector point of view, it's incredibly useful, and we're hoping that trend continues, that CISA, his team, the ministry and the public sector guys can learn from some of the issues that we've got on the table and can really hear firsthand what the private sector issues are and their perspectives are, and in doing so that we richen and deepen that singing off the same hymn sheet mantra that we like to espouse, but sometimes we need to really put into practice.
Well, David, Tourism Update is very excited to attend the conference. We look forward to this A-list of speakers. We look forward to the interaction, and we will be tweeting live and doing some social media there. So thank you for taking us through the conference, the format, the topics, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Kerry, and thanks very much for your partnership. I should have mentioned that as well. We've got Now Media as one of our key partners. So thanks very much.
Very excited to be a part of this amazing initiative. Thanks,
Yes.
David.